Thank you for joining in. I am excited to make my first big announcement as a minister responsible for housing. Since taking the housing portfolio, I have held many discussions and consultations with my federal and provincial colleagues, local governments, community groups, and the private sector. Through these meetings, I have better understood New Brunswick's housing landscape and the need for a unified approach to address our housing challenges. Today's announcement will significantly benefit all housing sectors across our province, and I am pleased to have a couple of key stakeholders I have been working with to help me share this great news. With me today are Kate Rogers, Mayor of the City of Fredericton, and Alex LeBlanc, Board President of the Housing Hub of New Brunswick and the President and CEO of the New Brunswick Business Council. The Council spearheaded the creation of the Housing Hub to answer a call for more affordable housing in rural communities, support workforce growth and attraction, and fill other needs left unfilled by the market. Along with other stakeholders, Kate and Alex have been instrumental in helping me better understand New Brunswick's housing situation, and I am grateful to have their support in this endeavor. Mylène Vincent, the new Executive Director of the Housing Hub.
Hélène Vincent, the new.
Ce sera un plaisir de travailler avec.
It will be a pleasure to work with you within the context of your new functions.
As we all know, there are no quick fixes to the complex issue of housing, and no one department or organization can solve this problem on their own. I thank my colleagues and the many departments and employees who have supported my efforts in collecting information on our residents' unique and collective housing challenges. Your help has been invaluable to me and the work that has gone into today's announcement. We are taking action to address provincial housing challenges by renewing the New Brunswick Housing Corporation. Nous prenons des mesures pour relever les défis.
We take on measures and action to address the provincial housing by renewing the New Brunswick Housing Corporation.
Of a housing strategy and aligning housing programs and projects. The New Brunswick Housing Corporation will be renewed as a separate entity overseeing provincial housing initiatives, facilities, strategy, and residential tenancy services. Once fully implemented, NBHC will consist of 3 branches: strategy and stakeholder relations, including overseeing financial programs and the development, implementation, and evaluation of housing strategy. Property management, responsible for the creation and maintenance of provincial housing facilities and administration of leasing agreements with landlords. The Residential Tenancies Tribunal is responsible for answering questions related to renting, mediating disputes between landlords and tenants, and ensuring regulations under the Residential Tenancies Act are followed. Associated housing programs and staff will be transferred from Transportation and Infrastructure, Social Development, and Service New Brunswick. Approximately 15 new positions will also be created. Une quinzaine de nouveaux postes seront.
There will be 15 new positions.
Social Development will continue to provide help to clients experiencing homelessness through various social assistance programs. During the spring legislative session, we will bring amendments to move the oversight of the New Brunswick Housing Corporation under the Minister responsible for housing, staffed with a board of directors, senior leaders, and a support team. Once fully operational, the new corporation will work with all levels of government, community groups, organizations, and the private sector to identify and maximize development opportunities and ensure we provide the necessary support through a housing strategy. Building vibrant and sustainable communities throughout New Brunswick is one of our government's top priorities, and I look forward to working with colleagues and stakeholders on the path forward. Thank you, and merci.
Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Before I proceed with questions from members of the media, I would like to highlight a few points. Media have the right to pose questions of their choice. Each reporter will have 1 question and 1 follow-up. Please ensure your microphones are placed on mute when you aren't asking your question.
You may ask 1 question, 1 follow-up question. In the language of your choice.
News.
Don't have any questions at the moment.
Okay, well then, over to Natalie Sturgeon with Global News.
Minister, when we've spoken with advocates, they sort of said, listen, we can't rely on the public, the private sector to really solve this problem. In your mind, does this resolve a little bit of that reliance on the private sector who, is for profit when they're building housing?
What this solves is there is one entity responsible for housing in New Brunswick, and one entity responsible for the housing strategy for New Brunswick, so the new programs and the new things we'll be bringing forward after we complete our assessment of the situation and do our strategy and release that in June. This is taking, employees within the government of New Brunswick and bringing them together that have been all working on the housing file, bringing them together under one roof, and it's really making 1 + 1 + 1 = 5 in this instance. So we have some horsepower behind solving the housing crisis in New Brunswick.
Is there anything else that you foresee can help with, these rent increases that we're still continuing to see, some well over what the cap was established to prevent? Like, do you feel like this organization can deal with that as it stands now?
It's really powerful to have all the people responsible for different aspects of housing together, working together. I've been talking about the fact that we have a housing crisis. It can't be solved by one entity alone, but by bringing the teams together that have responsibility for different parts of the housing continuum into one place, you really have a lot of more energy and ability to get things done for New Brunswickers.
Okay. Allison Sampson.
Why now? I know there's been calls for the return of the corporation for quite some time. What sparked bringing it back now?
Well, I was made minister responsible for housing in October and took the first few months to really deal with stakeholders, talk to municipalities, talk to other entities that have some aspect responsible for housing in our province. And it became quite clear that we needed a focused group rather than, there are 8 different departments that have some aspect of housing, 3 that have a big responsibility around housing, and they were each working and doing great work in their own departments, but by bringing them all together, it has a holistic view on the housing spectrum in New Brunswick, which is extremely important when you're looking at everything from rural housing to affordable housing, workforce housing, student housing. We need all the individuals responsible for that together so that we can provide the solutions that are going to help all of New Brunswick.
Are there any particular incidents or anything you can point to that decided we're going to go back to the corporation?
It was interesting. I was talking to Mayor Kate just before this, before we started the press conference, and she was talking about we're sitting with a group yesterday, and they were having a housing problem, and they didn't even know which department to go talk to. They didn't know who to talk to, and this puts a focus on housing. It shows that our government cares about New Brunswickers and their housing needs, and has us all together so we can work for the right solutions for New Brunswick.
Just to clarify, so the reason is that so there is just one singular banner.
And there's more power behind having all the individuals together, working together. So, it's one place to go, and it's one group that's solving the problems.
We're going to go to we'll go to Jennifer Pritchett with All New Brunswick now.
Hi, thank you, Minister. I wonder if you could talk about the budget for the new corporation as well as the senior leaders who are going to be overseeing it.
So that's a really good question, Jennifer, and I don't have all the answers yet. Part of, what I committed to when I became minister responsible for housing was to be transparent all the way through and to engage with stakeholders. We saw this change needed to be made, so we're making this change, but there's legislative changes that have to happen in the spring session. We need to bring the groups together and see where we need to enhance certain parts of the housing corporation. So we are bringing the teams together from Transportation and Infrastructure, Social Development, and Service New Brunswick. That's going to be at least 100 employees. And then we need to look at what's required for the executive team. So the financial piece and all the details around the executive team will be released as we move forward. I'll be transparent transparent all the way through, and I'll share it as more information is available.
Do you have a timeline of when those senior leaders will be hired, appointed, as well as the budget narrowed down?
Everything's happening very, very quickly. Some of the budget things will be settled as we go into main estimates in April. More will be unfolding, but the housing strategy is going to be released in June, so we'd like to have the bulk of that work done then in time for when Royal Ascent happens.
Thank you, Minister. Natalie Question has another question to ask, and go ahead, Natalie.
For the two sitting opposite to the minister, obviously you both have some sort of stake in an increased way to make affordable housing. I'm wondering if each of you could give me your reaction to this renewal of the New Brunswick Housing Corporation.
Mayor, you want to go first?
Thank you. So increasingly municipalities engaged in housing. We're needing to ensure that we have housing for everyone that lives within our jurisdictions. And it will be very helpful to have one entry point with our partners at the provincial government. I think it will coordinate the way that we function, the way that we work together. So for me, that is actually the greatest benefit. We've figured it out. Like, there are a lot of awesome people who are working on the housing file in the provincial government, and because we're now increasingly working intimately in housing, we have figured out where they are. But if you didn't know, it would be tricky to find. It's not obvious where those who are laser focused on housing, where they're working out of. So to reignite the Housing Corp in this way means that it becomes evident to everyone where that single point of entry is. So I think that it's just going to certainly help us to work collaboratively. It's going to help us to coordinate our efforts. And because housing, I mean, it is at a critical level, and we need to, and it has been for quite some time, and the response needs to be urgent, and it needs to be coordinated, and it needs to be effective. And to me, the Housing Corp, those of us who remember a highly functioning Housing Corp from like late 80s, early 90s, when it was more fully funded, it's very effective. And so I know there have been many of us calling on this, having this renewed focal point for housing. And to me, this does this, and I'm so thrilled that the minister has seen the opportunity of this. And it will help all of us who are trying to move the needle on housing. Having one access point with our partners at government will help with that.
I would echo everything the mayor said. The needs for housing in rural communities are urgent, and the needs span from workforce housing to affordable housing to a range of housing solutions. Having a single partner in government and a more streamlined, accelerated process to support development partners outside of government, nonprofits, co-ops, municipalities, other groups that want to develop housing is going to be key. So we look forward to working with the Housing Corporation. I think that today's a very exciting announcement, and this urgency is needed right now in New Brunswick.
Thank you, everyone. Merci. Jennifer Pritchett, do you have one more follow-up question?
I think I'm fine for now. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
I'm so sorry.
Well, go right ahead.
I was just wondering if you could break down a little bit more the roles of the 15 new positions that are going to be added.
It's kind of the same answer that I gave.
Question around it. We're letting you in on the inside very, very early on in this process, and we are working through exactly what it looks like for the leadership team and exactly what it looks like financially, and I will be available and answer more questions as we move forward. Part of it's related to, we actually have legislative changes that need to be made in the spring session in the legislature, so that has to happen. But at the same time, I will continue to share information as we solidify exactly how this is going to roll out. But this is exciting and really, really positive for our province.
Can I add to that? I just feel the need, and it's to build on new positions here. There are new municipalities too are looking to fill positions for folks to help sort of unlock more affordable housing. And what we're realizing is there's a deficit of people who work in that field. I think that everyone needs to think outside the box as to what those roles look like and what skill sets are required to do that work. It's not an obvious profession that you go get a designation for, right? It's a culmination of a lot of skills. And so as we're filling these roles, it's important that we all think that way. What are the different assets that are required to do this work, whether it be networking, knowing about how to building, knowing how to access funding programs. There's so many things involved with that. So I think it's going to be exciting. I believe the creation of these 15 roles, it's going to be exciting creating them, and I'll provide some really interesting opportunities for folks who've been working in communities across the province.
Okay, great. Well, that